Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Week 2 of the 2022 League of Legends College Championship. I, Dylan MLBD, will be your host guiding you through this week's top 16 matches, alongside my good friend and trusty analyst, TJ Bjorklund, who was with me last week. TJ, how you doing?
I'm great. We had an exciting last week, and I'm looking forward to see who gets to claim a spot in LA. Like,
Woo!
you can't be more excited than that when you're a collegiate player. Like, you get to go to LA, play in person. Super amazing that Riot's doing that this year, so I'm super excited.
I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is the first time it's back in Los Angeles since 2019, right? Like, I don't think they were there last year. In 2020, there was no championship. So you're right. Very, very exciting. But that's not all, everybody. We're joined for today's games by Joshua Joshi Howard, a Path to LCS commentator. Josh, how are you feeling about being on the college championship broadcast for the next couple days?
Dude, honestly, I was a bit bummed out I wasn't here last week. I had a wedding to go to, and
Oh.
now we just get to see all these guys having this big opportunity. Like you said, one series away from having their opportunity to go play live in the LCS studios. And we just saw how big this was for academy players, for collegiate players who are still looking to see if they actually want to go towards the path to pro. There's no greater motivator than actually having an opportunity to play on the stage you're always aspiring to.
And that's the thing, right? I feel like the special part of collegiate is that you have so many players who are trying to make this dream happen, and to get to go to the studio that you've been watching for years and years and years. I mean, it's just so special, and to be able to bring those games live to you guys, it's going to be a treat. And there's so much on the line for each of these teams. First things first on the desk, let's take a look at the games that are going to be happening today, not only on this stream, on the LCS stream, but also on our partner stream, Unified Live. We are starting off today with Western Legends versus Grandview over here on the LCS stream. And then UST Esports versus Michigan is also happening right now over on the Unified Live stream. At 3 o'clock Pacific, we will be streaming Michigan State versus Harrisburg Storm. And then on the other stream, Unified Live, it will be Winthrop versus CU Boulder. TJ, I'm going to start first with you. What series catches your eye today?
Well, when looking at this not on our stream here, the one that most excites me is the Michigan versus UST series. I think it's a very David and Goliath type of situation where obviously the UST guys come in extremely strong and they're definitely looking to get onto the stage like they were just all visiting the LCS finals. But that doesn't mean that Michigan can't take a win from anything. They definitely do have players that are notable, just less known than the UST players. And so looking forward to see if they prepare anything special there to come in and take a win.
I'm surprised we're not talking about Winthrop already. For like a team that had so many stellar results as a collegiate organization last year and even into this year, it feels like almost a disservice to not like hype these guys up. Now we do have to note that they aren't going to be having the same kind of crazy roster like they did last time around, but they're still a team that a lot of people have a lot of eyes on, and honestly, I have them favorited to actually go to LA.
Ooh, okay. A little bit of a spicy early prediction, Josh. I like it. I like it. All right, you
We're in a
guys.
rumble.
Yeah, ooh. Thanks for talking about the matches today, but we're on a new patch, guys. Patch 12.8 dropped just recently, and sure, we won't be seeing Swain, but I do actually want to pick your guys' brains for, changes that happened, champions that might be on the rise that we might catch in today's collegiate games. TJ, I'm kicking it to you first. What are your thoughts on this patch?
So the first most notable thing that we see happening today is that Jinx and Xayah have both been nerfed. I think that these are kind of placebo nerfs. They are significant, don't get me wrong, but at the level of play, I don't think they'll have as significant as an impact as you might think. In contrary to that, there are a lot of buffs here. And in collegiate, we love to have unique picks, especially deep pocket picks, one-trick champions, all the likes. So I'm really excited to see the Mordekaiser come out because a lot of people regarded his buffs as really big, and Poppy. Poppy's a champion that's extremely good weak side and really throws a wrench in the plans. So I'm most excited to see those two characters come up today.
Yo, I'm glad you touched on it, TJ, because Poppy is nuts. This champion was already playable in 3 roles, top jungle support. It was already seeing some growth as a counterpick to Lee Sin. And the fact that most team fights, go about 15 seconds, the change to her W cooldown going from once per team fight to twice per team fight, and if you build enough, haste these days, you can even get it up to 3 times per fight, just locks down so many different high mobility champions. The one other one I kind of want to look at though is Kaisa because Kai'Sa was a champion that was kind of hovering around as just like mid lane pick that the LCK played with a little bit. We saw it played by a lot of different people during the earlier part of the season, but I feel like the champion, while it can still build AP, doesn't perform in the same way that it used to. It's not this super insane poke monster. Instead, it just does a lot more hybrid damage, and you can get that little bit of poke on top of it.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I agree with the sentiment that you guys have on a lot of these picks. Poppy has always been a favorite of mine, just playing personally and watching Poppy, and I feel like against a jungler like Winston, I mean, this guy, I've seen him play Kha'Zix, I've seen him play Lee Sin. There's so many champions that he enjoys playing that could be countered. We've got AIRREN, who loves playing things like Zeri. I mean, Poppy could certainly see an appearance in this first series. But let's switch gears and let's actually talk about the first series that we're going to be streaming over here on the LCS channel. We have GVU taking on Western Legends, University of Western Ontario. And let's start with a sort of summary of Grandview University. Let's bring up the graphic, the bracket graphic from last week so we can take a look at the top 32 matches. So there was the round of 32 played last week, and if we look at this would be the left side of the bracket, we see Western took the 2-0 win in their series, and GVU also took the 2-0 win. Now I think GVU's 2-0, personally might be a little bit stretched because having watched those games from the sideline, it did seem like it was a very, very, very close series, and Game 2 especially was won just because of Kolthro's Viego being so dominating. But let's actually talk first about GVU for today's matches. So starting with you, TJ, what are your thoughts on GVU as a whole? And we're actually, highlighting a few players as well.
Yeah, so in GVU, I think that they're a group of friends that plays together and they have a lot of experience playing together. So I think that can result in a lot of trust and decision making where, let's say, their support were to say, I want to cover this dive, I want to link up here and do this thing. It can create an advantage. And I think that might pair especially well into what Gorica and what Winston likes to do in the enemy team. I think that we have hyped up AIRREN and Pluto as some of the best bot laners in Collegiate. But unfortunately, their performance in the last series wasn't necessarily indicative of that. I'm looking forward to see if they come out strong today and then take a lead, maybe against, Gorica is an extremely strong player, especially when you think about the fact that GVU's game plan for most of the season has been based around their bot lane.
Yeah, and TJ, you kind of touched on the fact that they're a bunch of homies who kind of play together, right? I feel like this is something that's been kind of underrated a lot of the time at the collegiate level, because the team that comes to mind for me is Bethany Lutheran, who had a fantastic run last year, and they weren't on paper one of the strongest teams that people were looking at, but they had so much trust in each other. Whenever somebody did something, everybody else would follow up on it, and I feel like that's definitely going to be playing into Grandview's strengths this time around, as long as they can play on the same page.
Yeah, I honestly agree. Having played as a collegiate player for 2 years myself, I feel like the year that my team performed the best was the year that we got along the most. We were doing the most things outside of the game together, and having known, a couple of GVU guys, for a while now, it really does feel like that team does have a special bond, and it's almost like that Bethany Lutheran last year. So, who knows? They've been trash talking a lot, but they might be able to make a deep run. And I believe we actually do have a graphic that highlights these different AD carries on both sides. So we can start with a discussion about the two different AD carries. Josh, I'm going to throw it to you. Let's talk about Gorica a little bit.
Yeah, Gorica is a player that we've been seeing for a long time, right? He's played on a number of different university teams. He's also played in the Proving Ground space for quite a while, playing with Bert Raj and later Resolve. And we know that this guy is a very strong player. He looks for lots of opportunities to make these big plays happen, and he follows up so well on aggressive players like Winston. And you see that in his own conference, an outstanding 852 damage per minute in a very tough conference at that.
It is important to note here that these stats are from the regular season, and there may be some difference in the quality of each of those conferences that they came from. So take these stats with a little bit of a grain of salt, because you always have to contextualize the stats in terms of who are you actually playing against. And I think today we'll get a much stronger indicator of how do these bot laners actually match up when they play against teams that are kind of much more equal in skill. On top of that, I do think it's important to note that it depends on how each team individually prioritizes their players. So Western, in my opinion, plays mostly for their jungler Winston, whereas GVU plays more for AIRREN in the bot lane. This obviously can't discount the supports either, and so Western support Lynx is much more likely to leave than Pluto in GVU.
Yeah, and I also think it's important to note, right? We just saw it with Desterux in our content before we all started. The fact that AIRREN and Pluto seem to be like right in each other's minds basically the entire way. I mean, there's a lot of synergy there. You got some homies coming out.
Oh man, I love it. You know, I played with Pluto for a year, and he's just such a nice guy, and the connection that I'm sure that they have, it really is fun. So it's going to be really exciting to see if AIRREN can, kind of step it up after week 1, because knowing the standards he holds for himself, I don't think he played up to those standards. I think he played well enough to get the 2-0, but against a better team like Western Legends, are you going to be able to have that same result with a similar performance? But let's actually switch gears and talk about the jungle matchup, which I think is the other very exciting head-to-head. Josh, I'll kick it to you first. Winston, what are your thoughts on him?
Well, I feel like the first thing when I look at whenever I see Winston on the table is some of the things that he was saying towards the end of the 2021 Proving Grounds, where he's saying, if there's any doubt that I'm not the best jungler in the amateur space, not the best jungler that deserves an academy spot, I don't know what more I can do to prove it. And I feel like a lot of that comes from his time in that Barrage Resolve camp, right, where he was looking for these opportunities to make himself look really good. And now that he's playing in Collegiate, it's a big opportunity for him to continue playing there and showing that he can carry this team, where he is one of their superstars.
Yeah, and Winston obviously is taking an extreme leadership position in this team. We saw that in both of the round of 32 games, he early picked mid and jungle. He was calling his support permanently be around him. He was calling his mid to move, and he's playing champ the Volibear really in the last series. I wouldn't be surprised if maybe today he takes a little bit more of a backseat and maybe defaults to something that maybe carries a little bit later in the game, knowing that they're against a stronger team that maybe won't die to as many random things. So I'm looking forward to see if Winston today will continue to early pick the Volibear or other extremely aggressive champions, or if he kind of moves back towards Viego, Hecarim, the extremely strong Karthus, etc.
TJ, what are your thoughts on Kolthro as a jungler?
I think that Kolthro is definitely much more willing to take the back seat than Winston is. I know that he's willing to be a role player, but that's not to say that he can't pull out the carry performances. Obviously, all of Collegiate's banned is Udyr. He was able to get that last week and had a good performance. We saw his Viego go extremely well. Granted, the enemy kind of inted a little bit in some of the fights, and Viego's a pop-off champion. So that same thing could happen today, right? Collegiate games are extremely scrappy, and I look forward to seeing if Kolthro is going to play those playmaking champions against Winston, or if he says, I'm just going to counter gank, I'm going to chill, I'm going to let my team be the star, and maybe take more of a backseat.
All right, guys, we've got 2 minutes until we dive into draft for our first match of the round of 16. TJ, I'm throwing it right back to you. What are your predictions for this game?
So I think the game is going to be a bloodbath either way. I think the sports are going to roam. I think that it's going to be an extremely close series, and it'll be a dictate mostly on who wants it more on the day. Because both of these teams are extremely good teams, but it comes down to who shows up today, right now, against the enemy team. And so I'm going to predict a 2-1 GVU based on the power of friendship and maybe a little bit more consistency across the entire roster. But this is not discrediting Western at all. They can come out today and have an extremely strong performance, and that would not surprise me.
I think for people who've been following CLOL as well, you take a look at the fact that all of us are going to be predicting Grandview, and we're being like, what's going on? Every single year these guys have both played CLOL. Western Ontario has had a greater run. They got second in 2019. They made it to top 16, whereas GVU was knocked out in top 32. But I feel like that kind of is a testament to how much faith we have in the homieism that we got going on in Grandview University, their ability to play as a squad, the fact that they don't have any weak links. It feels like everybody's constantly pushing each other to look better, really plays into what you were saying, TJ, where it's like these guys are going to want it. They are saying that they've already booked their flights. Now they just need to actually prove it.
I love the trash talk in this space. I mean, you open up Twitter and you have half of GVU's roster tweeting out pictures of Los Angeles and emojis.
Weather's nice.
The weather is beautiful. I'm sure it is at this time of year, and we're going to have to see which team is actually going to be able to book that ticket to LA, because we're just 3, maybe even 2 games away from seeing who is going to come out on top. That is all from us on the desk to open up this series. Rebel, Fox, and Travysty are your casters to bring us through the first series of the round of 16. I am so excited. Gentlemen, take it away.
We're excited over here as well. We're ready to get into some fantastic collision action. As you said, my name is Travysty. I am joined here with Rebel Fox, and Rebel, you and me, we've been following collision action all year long, and we are seeing two teams contending against one another here.
And not just talking about the entirety of the season for these two teams, it's gone back such a ridiculous history for both GVU and also Western Legends inside of Collegiate. And so it's such an amazing storied matchup that we have here inside of the top 16. Years past, we had like top 4 teams, top 8 teams that we were really convinced were going to be the contenders. But this year, even into the round of 16s, it feels like we're getting matchups that could have been felt all the way up into those grand finals type area. We're getting such excitement because of all of the development and all of the talent that we have loaded into CUL this year.
And when you talk about talent loaded up, I want to bring up, these are two teams here between Western Legends and GVU. They were number 1 inside their group. They came out of their conference swinging, and they're here facing against each other. And one of them, only one of them, can make their way into top A.
It's really incredible because neither one of them lost a game in their first round. And prior to that, Western Legends had lost 1 game in the Eastern Conference all season. Not 1 series, 1 game. GVU in the same fashion. They lost 1 series. That was because their ADC was gone as well. Went completely lossless the rest of the split and didn't take a loss in round of 32. So we are in a position where these two very, very long-standing members, two very kind of historic teams here without a collegiate. I don't think that goes without saying, Mr. Travis. They're matching really, really early in the tournament, which is, to me, unfortunate because we could have got this a lot later in the tournament. I don't think anyone would have been upset seeing this as a top 8 or even a top 4 matchup potentially. But here, we're getting it early because of everybody, the way bracket fell and everything else kind of coming together in perfect starlight so that we can actually get these two to see this early.
Yeah, everything on the line. The showdown will begin. I am very excited to see exactly what they have prepared because both of these squads, one of my favorite things about collegiate action is we get to see all sorts of bits of chaos that come about, especially when you get to take into the fact there are, different champion pools and stuff like that that come about. I'm very much so looking forward to seeing what's prepped because you look at both these teams, these are two teams that know that they need to prepare. They've talked about it regular season throughout where they were like, yeah, we're preparing for our next matchup. We're taking each matchup very, very seriously. And as we've been highlighting time and time again here for the past few moments, these are two teams that are, like you said, they could have been top 8 going against each other. And everybody been like, yeah, I could see them both being top 8.
This is also like just kicking off into some of the points about referencing a little bit like last season with Western. Last season, I think Western in a lot of people's eyes was a top 4 team, maybe even a top 2 team, depending on how the bracket fell. Their competition with Winthrop, Maryville, and even Harrisburg in that regard as well. Seeing them get into that top 4 was almost an expectation, and they got put out in round of 16 by Bethany last season, which was a little bit of a shocker for a lot of teams, which again, you want to talk about like kind of a, narrative, cohesion between this split and last split. Think about that Bethany squad and the type of, camaraderie that they had. They had like a stand-in coach with Colmer who was able to do a lot of work with them as well inside of that split too. They had I wouldn't call it a miracle run necessarily, but they had a run that I think exceeded people's expectations. And it started off with a kickoff against Western, who had a very solid roster basically all throughout, had high expectations on them, and unfortunately fell flat in the round of 16. And now Western Legends coming back with a very similar storied roster, a lot of star power on it, not necessarily having the same kind of coaching structure, and GVU coming in with all this camaraderie, with this coach walking into this situation, with this experience that we've seen them accrue over the course of the last 6 months. Things started to line up, Mr. Travis. I don't know, man.
I didn't realize until now that Western's weakness might just be the power of friendship until you gave me all of that. So I don't know, man. The heart of the draft, the heart of the cards, whatever it may be. It's a very interesting thing that yet again Western find themselves in the same storyline, and it's a different team. GVU has been that team that's paired together. We got to see an excellent content piece where we got to see AIRREN and Pluto kind of just, vibing. They know exactly everything about each other, which is great as a bot lane duo. But this is a squad in general from GVU that I want to reiterate is just that has this camaraderie. They play so well as a solid group of 5, and it's phenomenal.
it's a pretty wild circumstance. I know that we have some potentially a break kind of on the horizon, so we're not going to take too much time. But yeah, talking about GVU, just a little bit of extension. I think they've been able to do very great things in terms of development. I think that the addition of Dreher has really taken this roster to another level. Western, of course, stands resolute. I think being number one out of the Eastern Conference with how dominant they were able to do it puts them a little bit ahead in a lot of people's minds. I don't think that's ridiculous given a lot of the players that we've been able to highlight, that our desk was able to highlight as well. And so things are a little bit crazy to think about, with Western standing in front of them, having players like Winston and Gorica that you would recognize not just from collegiate years past, but even from academy and amateur and all of the successes they've had. It is a difficult mountain to climb. Last week they got tested by San Diego, and they did not fall at all, didn't even falter a game, despite two very rough situations to try to overcome. And so to me, it actually points to the fact that this team is ready. They're ready to rock inside of their 5-on-5 as well, and that they've put together a roster that's capable of overcoming great challenge. This is definitely going to be one of them if they want to make it to that top 8.
Never say die is an attitude to have, especially in a best of series. And we got to see that tenacity coming out from this squad, but flowing it over to the other side too. I want to highlight Gorica inside of Western had a very fantastic performance on the Xayah, especially. We got to see him popping off on that champion. And that's something that you have to keep your eyes on, is the talent that is on this Western squad is very hard to contest. And if you put resources into it, if they're able to play to their skill ceiling, this is a mountain, as you said, that you have to figure out a way to be able to climb up, because it can be a very steep climb.
Gorica has been incredible inside of amateur academy, all these other places that he's been in. He's been consistently performing as like one of the highest, even just like damage per gold value. When you put resources into Gorica, he gives you returns, no matter the circumstances. You can rely on him to be a carry, regardless of the situation. And so when you look at GVU's bot lane and you see AIRREN and Pluto, two people that we hyped up really heavily last week, we saw them have a good performance, but didn't explode out of the gate against San Diego. This is the person that I think really marks them for being able to have successes that proves them at the next level. I'm looking at Gorica to be not only the carry for Western, but to just be the carry, throughout all of this entire tournament for this team to be like, not just 16, but even a round of 8. This is the weapon that Western has. GVU's got to overcome that with this bottom lane. GVU's bot lane has a chance to prove that they are at the level of somebody that is as storied as Gorica, and this is the situation to do it. I also don't want to take anything away from Gorica's laning partner, Lynx, because Lynx did an amazing job last year with this roster, was very, very widely considered one of the better ADCs inside of this, to the point where he went to proving grounds with the Supernova as well. He is off-rolling at the moment, but Lynx is also an incredible player. So the two members, the amount of talent they got just loaded into the bot lane position alone is pretty incredible.
Incredible indeed. Now it's time for us to figure out what weapons they are taking to the Rift. We're in pick and ban, and I'm going to tell you right now, Kolthro, not getting that Udyr.
Not after last week, no. Yeah, Kolthro was amazing on the Udyr last week. It's a preference pick. Did not get touched as of the new patch. And so, yeah, you're never letting Kolthro have that one. He will farm. He will be a menace inside of team fights. He'll be able to command things incredibly. And it's not shocking at all that Western was able to actually kind of sniff this one out really quickly. As well as the on the opposite side, of course, the Graves getting taken off the board. It was interesting because partway into the split, Western Legends had actually swapped from Grovey, who was the top laner that played with him most of the majority of the split, into DrCalculus. And one of the big champions, I think, that really kind of yielded that swap was the Graves pick in the top lane. And so Grandview, not wanting that one to be on the board to potentially flex between Winston, who's also, again, one of these very well-known players on Western's roster, and being able to put it into DrCalculus's hands to cancel whatever Prankuru is going to do seems to be a preference.
I think that's a great preference to, enable for yourself. The Lucian being banned is another interesting one, though. That's a flex pick that they're saying, hey, yo, GVU doesn't know we're not playing that game. This is a team of friends. Friends can share this champion. No, not dealing with it. So it makes a lot of sense. And this is a champion that had a lot of priority in last week in top 32, where it was that Karma that was getting picked up by a lot of teams if it was left open.
Actually really interesting that the Karma is getting banned out by GVU, because this oftentimes is taken away from them as they flex it between Meslo, Prankuru, but also Pluto, who's an incredible user of that champion in the bottom side, to be able to have that tool for themselves inside of a game like this against somebody like Gorica, to be able to have pushing power and agency out of their bottom lane feels like something that they would be wanting very, very heavily. And so banning that one away is indicative of the fact that they believe Western Legends will in fact take that one. It's not shocking because Loyal sits in the mid lane. Loyal's incredible at affecting side lanes as a mid laner, as well as playing a very low econ style of gameplay. It wouldn't be shocking to see something like Seraphine pop up here inside of a series like this for Western either. I know that, it's an intriguing prospect, but this is one of the few teams that I think makes it work really well.
I like the fact that we go into our first pick after a Draven ban. They said, Gorica, none of that. What is first pick for Western Legends, as they're currently thinking about what their options are?
Standing on this kind of premise and a lot of things, last week I feel like this would have been Jinx, but with the new patch, I'm curious what these new kind of ADCs, what these new feelings are about some of the things. I know our desk touched on it a little bit, as the nerfs, they weren't necessarily like the hardest hitting if you're playing the game properly, but again, if you see that nerf incoming and you're practicing something else consistently for specifically this moment, maybe this is the play. And Western Legends, I'm not shocked at all to see Caitlyn. I think this is a great pick because it means that you want to play towards bot lane. This isn't a champion necessarily that you like leaving on an island for the entirety of the game, because then it falls into this rut of not having that much resource, falling into like a mid-game power loss at least a little bit. This is where they're like, no, we're going to play to bot side, we're going to break that tower, we're putting Gorica elsewhere, and he's going to chip away all the turret plates and get onto 3 items as fast as possible.
Bro, Reset City is here though. You've got a Karthus to drop people inside it, and AIRREN could possibly get it sided. That is a Jinx lock-in for Grandview, so they're looking to pop off in these team fights.
And it's not shocking because, again, like the loss potentially of just a bit of health, about an auto attack's worth of health, isn't super influential in the majority of matchups, especially when you've got the rockets to be able to range with on the bottom side. This is something that I think people popularized into Caitlyn because it can contest her wave clear very early in the game, the range early in the game, and will scale better into late game team fights as well with AoE rockets into the opposing team. The problem is Western Legends have now doubled down on the fact that they've got double range in the bottom lane. Now, 1 bit auto attack's worth of health that Jinx is going to be missing is going to be felt a lot more in a lane with a Lux and a Caitlyn than it is against a lot of other bot lane matchups that you'd be up against. I'm sure Western Legends with 2 ADCs are going to understand how to punish this champion now on the bottom side.
Exciting to see, though. A Gangplank was just left open, and that's an easy grab for DrCalculus. This is a champion that's been very prevalent inside the scene. The answer on the other side is possibly this Tahm Kench.
Got to make sure to have safety of some kind for Jinx inside this bottom lane. You don't want to just get battered and bruised and let the Caitlyn kind of walk away with an easy winning situation. And this is clearly weak side, top side here for DrCalculus, because they want to put every resource they can into Gorica and into the Caitlyn, which I think is the strategy that their draft and their team is best known for here on Western Legends. The more interesting piece is Grandview. Last week, they actually had the Karthus played against them, and it very nearly 1v5'd the game against them. It was really incredible, and it was off the back of specifically Kolthro that they were able to overcome that really, really powerful Karthus that was able to be brought out by San Diego. And here they bring it out themselves. They've got a ceiling jungler. They are goading Winston into playing something aggressive. Winston is so known for being able to walk into the opposing jungle, be able to make these very what you would call very weighted calls, weighted hands calls, where he says, I'm going here, we're doing this now. This is how you want to play against the Karthus. It's a question of whether Kolthro is ready for it, because I've heard there are some bait picks into the Karthus that just are not prepared. And if you let Kolthro start to scale, the Karthus can take things over.
Very quickly, very swiftly, once level 6 are hit, it becomes a dangerous time for any of the laners. But you do see, on the other side, Ornn locked in. So it is a Tahm Kench in that support role, and we got the Ornn in the top side to face off against DrCalculus.
Interesting. So they ban out one top lane pick, I think, more so with the Kled, but also the Riven. It tells me that they know that Meslo's pool could be something that they're actually considering trying to take away to make sure that, Loyal isn't going to get punished here. Something walking into the series is that Meslo, I know our desk talked about it a little bit, affecting sides, not kind of having, the greatest attempt at being able to affect the map around him, versus Loyal, who is the exact opposite. He's not known as a player who's going to, express a bunch of skill in the one-on-one matchup, but oftentimes will find himself in skirmishes and in supportive type roles in the mid lane to help out the remainder of his match as much as possible. It yields potential for Meslo to try to abuse either the one-on-one matchup or find something he's comfortable skirmishing with to match that pressure earlier on in the game that can win them the mid-jungle combination here on the side of you.
That's a Zed, buddy.
What I'm saying, man.
There's no hesitation, by the way. He's just like, he saw Viktor's like, easy lock.
See, I was wondering if we would get any sort of shenanigans between Kolthro and Meslo here with like the Zed jungle and the Karthus mid, but that's not going to be the case in the slightest. Instead, again, Meslo, he wants the ability to play directly up against Loyal, which is a position on the map that I feel as though GVU can exploit in the right circumstances, and they play to it just as much as possible. If he starts off on a good foot and is able to shut out the Viktor to begin the game, and then you have Meslo beginning to make a map impact into the jungle position up against the Volibear or into your side lanes, there's a lot of threat that can be put onto a bunch of squishy champions. Really, there's 4 champions that are very good for Meslo to be able to jump on in a late game situation to just eviscerate from a fight, given the correct circumstances and given that he's playing the champion. So Meslo, a lot of carry potential potentially in this Zed to kick off game number 1, as GVO's also constructed later game composition. They got the Karthus, the Jinx, the Ornn to be able to rely on if the end of the game approaches more swiftly. You get to 30, 35 minutes, and all these champions are on their right items. Things should feel good for you because you've got a lot of engage, got a lot of range to work with when it comes to damage. But this early game feels like it is dictated almost exclusively by how well Meslo is able to use the Zed to impact more than just the one-on-one in the laning phase.
Yeah, GVU in that mid to late game is you can run, but you can't hide if they're able to scale the way they want to, and if they're able to play the way they want, right? We've talked about the points time and time again, and there are some immobile carries coming out from Western, but they also have their own scaling into their advantage if they get a lead, right? We know Viktor's storyline. Viktor is notorious for it. You were talking about putting early resources into Caitlyn, and we have seen Caitlyn Lutz take over as the new terror in the bot lane. When it used to be Caitlyn Morgana, Lutz is there now, and it is devastating, especially because Lutz doesn't build like a support. We'll build like those AP items, and all of a sudden your HP bar gets blinked very, very easily. So I'm keeping my eyes on Western in their transitions because, if they get going, if they get those itemization points before GVU is able to strike those moments of aggression, it could be a serious flaw in their strat.
To me, it's a question of how well GVU is able to set up their map around defending this bottom side, because they understand not only are they going to attempt to play into AIRREN and Pluto, but specifically Gorica can get ahead through ways of like tower plates, right? CS advantages, things that you could work for. And there's very little way that GVU has just on face value to stop this, right? You've got superior pushing when the Gangplank hits closer to first item, starts to be able to barrel waves and basically eradicate them. The Ornn no longer has the ability to move out and kind of help assist on the top side nearly as much. And the Viktor's the same way, where like Zed burns a couple of abilities, will be able to clear the wave eventually, but Viktor should hit that breakpoint a lot faster in the game and make it difficult for Meslo to move out, for Prankuru to join in on fights without kind of setting up a really massive 5-on-5s on the side of GVU. So this is what we're curious about walking into game number 1, is how much control can Western Legends take with this Volibear and playing into this bottom side, which is very clearly what they're anticipating to do.
Here we go. Game number 1 between Western Legends and Grandview begins here, as we see the two squads lining up. Just a standard bit of defense between these two teams.
Okay. Kicking things off just to begin the game. Extremely excited about the prospect of taking this to very, very hyper late game, right? Because you've got tank and engage on one side, you got a little bit of tankiness in like the Volibear. You've got so much damage on Western Legends. All these players capable and willing to support inside of a team fight. Things break very, very loose. There's a lot of ways that like there's individual champions can go crazy. And again, I want to talk about Meslo a little more because on the Zed pick, the possibility of him trying to do something in the early stage of the game, I think is higher than anything else on the side of GVU. Yeah. So maybe they play to the Zed to kick things off. But in the later stages, if you've only got gold in Gorica and like you haven't been able to get your Gangplank ahead, haven't been able to get Loyal into the right position to full carry a fight, being able to assassinate properly into that Caitlyn, just removing her, if Meslo even trades the 1-for-1, things go a little bit differently if you're able to keep everybody else in the right circumstances for GVU. So again, all things considered even, if you're putting so much into Gorica that he's able to full carry a game, that's great. But you do have to be careful if you over-index income and like resources into the Caitlyn, that he just gets eviscerated by Zed in the later stages of the game, and then you have no team fight. Now, thankfully, they've got Gangplank, they've got Viktor. They shouldn't have to worry about that all that much.
They shouldn't have to. They do have to worry about, there's a couple worries that they might have that they might forget about in the moment and then get a immediate reminder. I do also want to bring up that Kolthro did go first strike probably has that futures market, so we'll probably have that mythic a
So is
lot
Aaron live
sooner
now?
than what a lot of other people would have. So
Or not
that's a
yet?
very,
He's live.
very important breakpoint for
Okay, yeah.
this Karthus in
I
the
want to
jungle. And I'm
highlight
keeping my eyes,
level
especially
1
between him and
or,
Winston.
like,
I
early
think this is
in
going to
any
be
of
a
these
very
lanes.
exciting
Generally,
one to
these,
see where the
Marquette
aggression
junglers
gets
have no
pulled
leash.
at,
Hold
and
up 1 second.
where they're able
Okay.
to, you know, hone that aggression, how they're able to get their resources, and how they're able to make things work for themselves and get their teams going in that sense.
I've already loved what I've seen because like Kolthro is going to be going for more of a full clear. He wants to play for high resource on the Karthus just as fast as he can, taking camps, getting experience and gold into his champion to make sure he can do all this damage, like you said, with first strike, trying to get onto the mythic as fast as possible. And what this is opening up is aggression in the mid lane. I love that Loyal does not sit here and go, oh, there's a Zed across from me. Like I have to worry. I have to stress that Meslo is going to be able to hands diff me. He's actually pushing up and choking up in the lane because he knows he's got the support of Volibear a lot faster.
You can check
all
this
over the place.
out. Already, Kolthro looking to drop some Skittles onto DrCalculus. He's not interested. He's only about vitamin C. Will be able to disengage from any action in the top lane with the help of Winston.
And Kolthro walking into top lane, trying to get the Gangplank behind to begin with, try to set Prankuru into a solid place. With just one gank, you can really make a massive impact where Prankuru gets onto early armor. It's difficult for the Gangplank to really kind of win that laning phase outright. So nice for Winston to be able to find his way to topside. He gets the crab and he gets the defense without having to burn any summoners. So DrCalculus feeling okay about the way that the circumstance played out. And again, mid lane is perma pushing, taking a bunch of damage is Meslo, or having taken a bunch of damage was Meslo, and bottom lane is playing to this range advantage, playing to this poke.
Yep.
Look at them. They've got a plate and a half already off this tower. They might get 2 by the end of this wave, which is incredible to think about how much they've been able to put on in this very short time in a game like this.
Bro, I feel so bad for AIRREN. He stepped on like a couple cupcakes while you were talking there too, and I was just like, oh no, he's got a sweet tooth enabled. He's just going straight for the bakery. The baked goods are a trap, AIRREN. Don't step in them. And I mean, I do like the fact that he has that cleanse, of course, make sure that he'll be safe in the case he gets caught by one of the stray bindings, as we have seen when the camera has panned down there. But it's rough, man. It's a hard knock life to be a Jinx in this matchup, just because Caitlyn Lutz, as you were talking about, it's so much range that you have to deal with over and over again.
Ooh. Topside is the one position that, again, like Prankuru has had good performances, is oftentimes on the tankier, kind of more, leave me alone type champions, don't put resource in, and is doing okay into the Gangplank to start with. Obviously, that early gank, pushing the Gangplank out was beneficial to this, making sure that DrCalculus isn't going to be able to win out the laning phase, setting up Prankuru to get towards that, like, the level 14, level 15, when the Ornn items start to actually come through, and the scaling can start to come in, because, again, the Ornn's value has been incredible. I'm pretty sure he is one of, if not the highest win rate champion inside of the round of 32 for a lot of teams. We had the joke that it was like Jinx from Arcane and Ornn from Arcane were our 2 champions of note to be able to work through all of the entire round of 32 games. So Brandview sticking to their guns, sticking to Prankuru on the softer side. And again, the Gangplank not in a position to really contest all that much. Kolthro's continued pathing up the top side sets up Prankuru for a really good side of the map. It's just a question of how much can Gorica and Lynx achieve on the other side now that they have themselves, I think, a little bit more space to work with into a defensive lane like AIRREN and Pluto are rocking right here.
It also gives you kind of hints of, like, you see Ornn, and it's just like, he does so much damage. And it has on Seal spell, but keeping our eyes peeled for that. 6 has been hit for Meslo in the mid lane. You see him trying to press the envelope on some aggression, as you can already see Loyal saying, yep, Seeker's arm guard, want some armor.
Yeah, it's a position you have to go to for Loyal, just to make sure that, like, early armor to be able to help with the defense up against the Zed. It's going to slow you down in your itemization. That's going to help you with your wave clear breakpoint. And this feels great for Meslo because you're already putting enough threat into Loyal, who's lost control of the wave to begin with here. If Meslo can continue this type of strategy, he goes for it.
Wait, going for the death mark, trying to get the assassination. The solo kill goes over to Meslo.
And Meslo, he's a long-standing player inside of like amateur and academy and all of this space, especially inside of amateur and UPL. And a lot of people know him as a top laner. He was a Riven one trick at one point. He's got incredible hands when it comes to one-on-one situations. So putting him on something like the Zed feels a lot more comfortable than I would say having him on something that has to affect sides, having him on a standard mage. And it opens him up for a lot more individual plays like this against Western Legends.
Oh my god, look at how much damage this Volibear has taken. Winston dropped down pretty low, does have the smite, so does secure Dragon, but the chase is still there. Kolthro is not done with him. He is just constantly bullying him as a result of this, forcing the back to come out. As you can see, the rest of the members starting to hit the map for themselves. No Jinx was available, so they couldn't possibly pick the skirmish.
It appeared as though, at some point when we were watching not only the solo kill in the mid lane, but also during the dragon fight, that Grandview had actually lost their summoners on the bottom side, where like the flash and the cleanse were all burnt, and Jinx was pushed out completely, which is what prompted that dragon. And Kolthro attempted to salvage it with some of that, like, the Skittles action, some of the individual action that he could take, but wasn't quite enough. As Meslo, he's already chunking the Viktor, man. The Seeker's arm guard is here, but it's not enough. You might need some armor boots. You might need the full Zonias. You might need a Iceborne gauntlet that from back in the day before it got removed, man. Like,
everybody talks about the
Malzahar
Malzahar tats. They don't talk about the Zed tats, where you have to buy the hourglass.
You have to buy Seeker's arm guard. Yeah, it's true. And again, it hurts Loyal's ability to affect the map. So one of the most beneficial parts about Western Legends mid laners is his ability to impact elsewhere. And if that's getting taken away from Meslo, it does mean that the map is at least a little more broken up for Grandview. Although they don't seem to be having that bad of an impact. It's 12 CS lead in the bottom lane already. They're shifting up to top side to grab the Rift Herald, try to get some more plates on the top side. Maybe even potentially push off Prankuru in attempts to take that top tower in its entirety here. Maybe grab up first flower plates and first tower gold for the Caitlyn as well.
Could be a very risky scenario if they do go for it. This is, like I was talking about earlier, Unsealed Spellbook Ornn. So it does have the Ignite, it doesn't have Flash. So make one misplay, it can be very rough. But Kolthro getting punished and gets dropped as well. And the Requiem got wasted. He used it right before he died.
He did.
So it's a trade of 1-for-1. Oh, that's Caitlyn dropped it. That's big.
Yeah, it really is humongous. I thought that also the Volibear was going to hover up towards topside, but was in the river, starting to clear down towards the other side of the map. DrCalculus, who's in a position to catch waves on the other side, might get bullied out a little bit, but is at least going to have this gold. This felt like a winning situation for Western completely, across the board. And like you said, the ultimate getting canceled for Kolthro was kind of the overarching thing that might have actually thrown this into complete disarray. That would have caused everything to go crazy. But Prankuru, again, with that spellbook, had the Ignite, barely ticks down Gorica, and it means they can't just immediately shift back into topside, immediately go for turret plates and throw down the Rift Herald as fast as possible. And instead, it takes a little bit of the wind out of the sails here for Western Legends, who are going to swap back into bot lane. And you see, of course, now that Winston is cleared the top side, is back into his own bottom side, has the red buff, could be looking with this level 6 potentially to dive for bot lane, put some aggression into AIRREN and Pluto, and also, again, to get this Caitlyn even further ahead.
How do you feel about possibly going shield bow here? I'm noticing that the Caitlyn actually, after getting those Berserker Greaves, got that Vamp Scepter right off the get-go, right off the cusp. So we've seen it a couple times, but the different levels of success.
Might be feeling the effects of the Meslo diff already. Again, this is another one of those respect buys where, like, maybe you feel the need with the shield bow to have that shield under wraps, so that, like, if Meslo were to get on top of you as Gorica, who's getting all this early game attention, supposed to get a bunch of the gold, the idea is just that, like, if you have that shield, you don't die, right? Like, you don't want to die outright to a full play, and this is one of the defensive maneuvers here against this team. I think it does take out a little bit of the damage that the Caitlyn could provide against Prankuru or even Pluto in the later game itemization, but I think ultimately it's not going to matter. The 6-item Caitlyn should be perfectly fine, and the shield is going to be necessary again to not just get absolutely evaporated from this guy.
Just he's pushing him back into 2 towers. Loyal's just like, please come over here. But you can see Winston says, no, you're gonna have this matchup, and you can see the respect. Look at how far back AIRREN is being shoved back. They haven't even used Rift Herald to crack them in this tower. They're gonna get this without Rift Herald just by the fact that Winston's just been sitting here on the side. Loyal taking a bit of damage. Meslo, wait, he got the kill. The Ignite finished him off right off the cusp. You see Winston trying to come and see if there's anything to salvage, but it's just a couple minions to be able to farm. Kolthro's over here waiting. They're going to go ahead and jump over the wall, and it is into the arms of Kolthro. Link's going to be careful. Tahm Kench looking to take a voyage, but only to safety as Gorica Link's half shifted to the mid lane. Prankuru is in the nearby vicinity as well. Forge God being used, tagging onto just a Caitlyn, but that's the target they want. Meslo goes on to a killing spree. The super mega dapper. It doesn't hit onto anybody, but now it's a Volibear against the world as everybody else is not able to get onto any of the key members. The Ignite will tick away, but not enough to burn through the hide of this bear. But the Requiem sure will, as they're going to be able to finally get it. No, he got the back off just in time to be able to stay alive.
It's an incredible set of circumstances where Grandview, they haven't needed much jungle pressure or any jungle pressure for Meslo to just start taking over mid lane. And Western Legends have realized, like, they take full bottom tower, right? They get gold into this Caitlyn, get it into Gorica where they want it to be, but they haven't shut down this early game from Meslo. And so the Zed just continues to get more menacing, both as a side laner and also as a threat inside of fights towards Gorica. And especially now that Dragons are completely in favor of Western Legends. They're tied up at the 1-for-1, so you still have to go 3 full Dragons in this game. We're down for 27 minutes, and the next couple can be contested. Grandview has something to attack with as the Karthus continues to scale up in this game, as the Ornn continues to scale up in the game.
The Andre's completed, Eclipse completed for 2 of these major carries. And you can see plates, though, being grabbed, being secured for Gorica and Lynx inside the mid lane. Not going to get the full tower, but plenty of money shed.
It's a great circumstance that, again, Western Legends have been able to capitalize as well as possible on this Gorica Caitlyn, on this win condition that they set for themselves. It's a question of, again, if you put yourself in a position where Meslo versus Gorica is your play in the middle of the game, 15, 20, 25 minutes, these team fights, is just, can Meslo get onto Gorica? Does that make a difference? And you can see also, I guess Lynx is starting to put in damage as well because the Sword Shoes are completed, the AP started to come in. You can feel the effects of these two in the laning phase. They're doing a great job taking advantage of the setup that's actually been provided for them. But again, the real question to me is whether Grandview is going to be able to capitalize on Meslo's ability to erase one or both of them inside of fights. Because again, the Viktor has fallen a little bit behind. He's going to be a ways off of that Mythic coming through, or the Zonia's coming through, in fact. And DrCalculus in the same position where at the other side of the map, you're waiting an even longer time to get this Gangplank online. So mid-game fights, not looking great for Western Legends if Grandview positions it correctly.
And gold is about even between these 2 teams, but looking at where the gold is between them, it's one side getting gold from these kills and this crazy action that's been happening in this mid jungle top side, and then you look over and you're like, yeah, the Caitlyn probably has a good amount of the gold for their team as well. You flip things around, and you know what? If you're putting your eggs into the Gorica basket, that's not a bad basket to put into. It is a very strong, well knitted basket, and Western Legends, they're kind of just moving around the map, trying to see if they can find any other gold on the map, but there's no neutral objectives currently up.
Now, with the Caitlyn and the Lux in the mid lane and having the advantage over top of AIRREN and Pluto because they've got better itemization, more gold in the early stages to work with, and of course the double ranged always helps as well. It means that they've got push out of mid with the mid tower down to be able to work with to move into neutral objectives. So say Dragon when the time comes up, but also Rift Herald in the early stage of the game, which is, again, a position where maybe they can use this to try to bridge the gold into the right circumstance.
It's looking good for them. As you can see, Kolthro looking to start pressing that advantage in terms of aggression. Has that pen, and Loyal taking a good heaping amount of damage, getting chased down, and is not in for a good time. The Skittles are just continuously being dropped at his feet. That is a kill going over to Kolthro.
And the leaning into the other side of the map, like, there's no position for Loyal to be in. He's not in mid lane taking resource because that's where Lynx and that's where Gorica are set up. He can't really be across the lane from Meslo because the Seeker's Arm Guard is not enough for him to stay alive. And so he's poking into his own jungle, and GVU knows the other side of the map is being aggressed against. It continues here for Western Legends. So they make a strike elsewhere. Let's see if they can mount a defense as well with this Rift Herald because, again, you're pouring gold into Gorica and Lynx. This is the #1 strategy. They are trying to make sure this Caitlyn can full carry this game. There's a way to start. They don't know the wraparounds here.
They're grabbing onto the Caitlyn, though. Caitlyn is completely left alone. Does not continue to be tagged. Teleport is coming in from the Gangplank into the top lane, looking to support their efforts a little bit further, trying to see if they can, but no more third charge for that Herald. As now you see Meslo looking to press the aggression and said, you guys left me alone with Loyal? Let me remind you of what happened last time. Flash is coming in, and it will be Meslo retreating back to the safety of his shadow.
Unfortunately, can't get the second shuriken, which would have led to the death. And again, GVU's mid laner showing off even more so in this one-on-one matchup up against Loyal, who hasn't been able to recover anything. It is Western Legends. They are bludgeoning with this composition exactly how you would expect them to. They are trying to get Gorica to a place to carry the game. Grandview are finding strikes elsewhere, though. This is the biggest thing that we talked about when it comes to the scaling. The Karthus, relatively unfazed, currently sitting at an advantage almost onto 2 full items. You know, the Zonias is going to be a stopgap, but on 3 items, maybe even the Magi's, that's going to be the break point where the Karthus really starts to hit hard against a team that doesn't have a bunch of tankiness and not a lot of magic resist on this team as well. And with Meslo being as menacing as he is, again, side lanes are almost always winning to push out somebody who's going to be standing across from him, and you have to watch your ADC like a hawk, because if Meslo removes him, that is the end of your team fight. You cannot be wherever you are on the map anymore.
100% agree, and trying to see if he can press the envelope on some aggression. Wants to see if he can, you know, say, hey, look, I am Volibear. I can run at you guys. I can make an impact. Hasn't been able to find that aggression just yet. Fishing for bindings here in the mid lane, but the Call of the Forge guy coming in. Gorica gets tagged again, but the gravity field was enough to slow and stop Prankuru from any kind of follow-up that could be initiated. Calculus taking a heaping amount of damage from these shadows.
Yep. It is Meslo who's able to poke in with a little bit of shuriken damage. That's a big game changer as well. Yeah, it's going to drop the health bars of so many members. Oh, with the Jinx rockets. They're so low.
Shield has been popped. Here we go. Deathmark popped onto Winston, taking a lot of damage onto him, but the stun is there. They kept him rooted for so long. The shutdown, is that the go button for this squad? No, it is Grandview grabbing the dragon. A swift retreat is in demand, and Grandview are going to make out like bandits at the sacrifice of their mid laner. Still looking to go. Artillery's being fired. That's the exhaust. There's a lot of resources. The laser inside of the choke point. The barrel's coming in. The gravity field can't get the stun, and they barely survive the chase.
Things kick off so well for Grandview right there with all of the health that they dropped off, but it didn't end up, or it did end up mattering. Obviously, you weren't able to clean up with Meslo, but they pushed them far enough off to grab the dragon to start themselves into a better situation. Again, we talk about the scaling that the Ornn and the Jinx are going to be able to provide to the later stages, and the threat that Meslo is going to be able to bring. You get so much of it, and you can see right here, Meslo, you could smell he wanted a quadrant. You could, like, look at that cluster. If he has a full combo, he probably kills 3 in 1 full combo. Instead, he used his cooldowns, he burnt off Gorica's health bar, or my apologies, he burnt off Winston's health bar, and he shoved them out far enough. The wrap-up afterwards was actually incredible for me from the side of Western, because look at their health bars. I don't think they're in full position to take a fight like this, but the range they're able to put out damage from made it so difficult for GVU to mount a full-on escape, and they did get out with their lives, but burning 2 flashes at the end, burning so much as well, was really, really incredible. Both sides fighting tooth and nail for every inch in this game.
Dude, I just love the, like, small little detail of Pluto being like, Aaron, quick, get in my mouth or else you will die. Like, if he didn't get in there, he was absolutely dead inside that choke point. But you also have to, you know, press F in chat for Meslo, because he got absolutely wrecked by CC there. Was not allowed to move. And like you said, could smell the quadra. There was a couple big moments there with that Karthus ult too. The shield bow got popped, right? Because of the Requiem. That was huge for them to possibly look to say, hey, yo, this is our button to press the advantage, go forward. I like the thought process that comes out from GVU. They said that, hey, we dropped everybody else low. Now if we get rid of Volibear, they can't contest this dragon. It's free for us. And if they try to contest it, we'll pick up a couple more members.
And I love the way that GVU has actually played out this game, because they've taken advantages where the weak side of the map is from the side of Western, when they're leaning super hard into Gorica, when they're leaning into getting something that's going to get them a gold advantage like a Rift Herald or Tower Plates. They really lean into it, right? They throw a lot of their weight, and so they're off balance, and the other side is available for a strike. And that is where GVU has been able to find some smaller advantages in individual play and kind of by circumstance of what's being left on the map for Western to punish. And Western, I don't think, has done enough so far with their really big leanings to actually net them enough of an advantage to win out in a game like this ultimately. Now, you can see the back and forth in team fights is still incredible. You think about not only the beginning of that fight where like Kolthro drops an ultimate, you have AIRREN drop an ultimate, and everybody's at half health for the side of Western, and things are really problematic. But then afterwards as well, again, when you're running through a Lux ultimate, when you're running through Caitlyn damage on the way out, when you're running through Gangplank barrels and the Gangplank ultimates, there's a lot of damage on your retreat. You almost have to full commit to a fight forward, because if you start running away from this team, they are going to be able to put damage into you on the way out.
And I do want to say we had a little bit of a break just because of a little tech issue, but we're right back into the fold, seeing what these teams have. And I want to put a little bit of respect on the Lynx. Lynx has been deadly on this Lutz. These bindings do not miss, and these lasers have been crippling. Got the Luden's Echo completed, and you know, normally you don't hype up the support for doing damage, but when you're playing Lutz, you can't help but do that.
Last week, I had the opportunity to talk about some of the players that have been promoted. I'm going to wait for this point at least a little bit, because it seems as though there's some deadly possibilities here between both Loyal and Meslo. He's just going to catch the wave. Oh, really? Okay. He used a shadow. He might... Okay,
yeah,
that's bad.
he's going to jump over. He's looking for the plays, trying to have the fancy footwork. Can he do such? Kolthro's here to support him. The Chaos Storm can't be enough. Doesn't catch up to Meslo. And what a big turnaround possibly that came about. But Requiem coming. Does he get the back off? No, not this time. Kolthro gets his kill.
Really, really incredible stuff. Once again, Meslo expressing so much individual talent right there, being able to find himself a situation where he uses the ultimate, is almost able to bring down Lynx, even without the ultimate applying to him instead, and setting up for Kolthro to find an additional kill. The star power, once again, coming through from this mid laner, where he's been able to express that time and time again. Is now GVU. They find so many openings on the map. Mid lane is going to be free for AIRREN to take down. That's a free turret into the back pocket in terms of gold for the Jinx. It feels like scrambling across the board for Western Legends, almost like they want to start teamfighting, but again, they're not really in a position where Grandview doesn't have ways to strike back. They have the gold advantage, which is crazy to me, but again, when the Caitlyn isn't around, plays don't oftentimes find themselves going in your favor. Ooh, Kolthro.
He's dead. Meslo is over here in the wings. You're going to be able to get him, but he's just going to make use out of his passive, but it's fine. Nobody else was in position to be able to assist him out of that, so... That's big. Is it the Baron?
Caitlyn. Yeah, I think they're going to start it up here, because what are you going to do to contest right now? You have no ultimate. Kolthro is really far out from being able to respawn, and what are you going to be able to use? Heck, Prankuru has no ultimate. Oh, actually, he just switched back to it, so he's going to be able to TP in if he needs to. But you can see there is setup here. There's a lot of Western Legends. They've got the TP. The full fight for come through. This is a 5v4 that Grandview has to win or lose the Baron.
Yeah, here we go. Call the Forge God goes into the pit, and a nice binding. Meslo cannot move. Prankuru goes into the pit, gets a beautiful knockup, but it's Pluto just trying to see if he can keep AIRREN alive. But the Chaos Storm is not something he is prepared to weather, as it's Pluto, the sole member of Grandview, getting chased down by Loyal. What a move from Western Legends.
And on one hand, we talk about the impact that Kolthro and Meslo and some of the individual players on Grandview are able to have in teamfights. Right there, Western Legends shutting them down. Equally impactful across the fight. Before jumping into it, obviously, Western Legends capitalizing on the pick on a Kolthro, grabbing up this Baron buff. Now you've got a Caitlyn, Lux, and a Viktor, who picked up a little bit of gold in that fight, if I might actually mention, alongside a Gangplank. They can siege around towers. They can use this to set up second dragon, deny that from Grandview, keep this game in just equilibrium in terms of dragons, and set up a bigger gold advantage than what they've had throughout the entirety of the game. They've been balancing this 1.5k advantage back and forth maximum between the two teams. Finally, Western Legends tips the scales.
Tips the scales in their favor off the back of a nice catch onto Kolthro, and then another nice catch by Lynx. Now they're putting the aggression into the mid lane. They're seeing if they can turn the tempo up in their favor, as Grandview putting on the defense for this tower, but it is not long for this world.
Again, difficulty trying to clear out these minions effectively. Really, the only one that's able to do it very, very well is AIRREN, and then on top of that, Kolthro. But neither of them want to step up too far out of fear of getting just immediately eviscerated by some of the long-range damage that comes through from Western Legends composition. And that means they push for more. Meslo on the side lane trying to pull a little bit of gold. They know there's no defense really for the inhibitor tower.
Oh, they almost catch up Kolthro. He goes golden, stays alive. The barrel chunks him to under half. Meslo got the reset off and is inside the mid lane now. Possible tango to occur, as they do get themselves another tower down in the bot lane. Looking to put the pressure on this inhibitor and this inhibitor tower.
This is tough for GVU. They're getting pulled in two directions with all this additional rage. They're going to fight.
Here we go. They get 3 members with it. That's a big ult, but nobody can follow up on the ultimate. It is tragic for the side of Grandview, but they just have to continue to use this for defense, as the Requiem, that's up, ultimate ability to be used. Use the Super Mega Death Rock. He cannot burst anybody down, but Gorica and Lynx are at critical HP, looking in assassination range, as this inhibitor is barely holding on.
And that's the little bit of reprieve that was necessary, I think, to keep their inhibitor up. Oh, ultimate spurt of they really want this inhib.
They really want it, and that's the blue smite coming in, gets the chilling onto him. Winston has to be cautious, is going to not overstay his welcome, and it is finally the inhibitor strangled away from the side of Grandview.
Western, they're pushing this advantage really well, right? They use the Baron buff, they knock down the mid inhibitor, they just completely bully it down, to be quite honest here, against Grandview. When they had both sides lane pushing, they tried to pull them apart. Grandview actually mounted a good defense with a number of their kind of cooldowns being burnt just to make sure that the inhibitor stayed up. But ultimately, Western Legends was willing to call them on the bluff of them actually committing to a full fight. As Meslo, I think, didn't have the ultimate, and also, like, he W's in, but he knew he probably wasn't going to capitalize on anything there, so just menacing approach, I suppose.
Yeah, menacing, but how menacing is it really for Winston? Like, look at his build. He's got that turbo Kim take. He's got a frozen heart. He's got these steel-plated boots. Like, how scared is Volibear really now of Meslo? It's the other members that are really more scared whenever they see that ominous shadow approach them.
The biggest thing to me so far from this game, from Grandview at least, again, has really just been that this engagement we talked about from Prankuru to start things off, maybe even Pluto to start things off, has not come to fruition at all. You want to set up Meslo to be in a flanking position or in a position where he can capitalize, follow up. Kolthro in the same way, being able to follow up and put himself in a position to be aggressive with the Karthus positioning off the back of the Ornn ultimate. But not once have we really seen the Ornn ultimate be followed up on properly from Grandview University. It feels like it's being used almost as a deterrent for Western Legends to stand where they are trying to test their positioning, but there's been no follow-up. When in reality, you really want to burn the Ornn ultimate to set up Meslo onto a target that can't make their own defense. If you can find that for Meslo, where like he's able to put a shadow on top of somebody that's CC'd by the Ornn ultimate and just evaporate them before they hit the ground, that is the ultimate decision. Or at least be able to push them into Meslo when he's in a flanking position to put damage to let everybody else collapse into that space. Again, hasn't come through for GVU quite yet. Haven't been able to figure out how to make this engage work.
About a 4K difference in favor of Western Legends, and they've been doing a great job, like you said, but it's also been Grandview not able to time their abilities right. The power of friendship has not been powering their team fights, and they have been struggling on that, Krutz. And seeing as they are playing a, bit behind, they're playing very respectful now of Western Legends. They understand next fight could be the last one, especially with this mid inhibitor cracked open and Baron spawning in less than a minute.
Biggest thing I think that's really coming up for Western Legends is there was a time and a place in this game where Grandview had a superior team fight because the damage wasn't there for anybody except for Gorica. Gorica's on 3 items, but it's 2.5 items now for both Gangplank and Viktor. They're online. The damage is there. There are threats outside of just the Caitlyn. You have to be careful with your decision making here. I've loved the combination from Kolthro and from AIRREN to knock somebody out of a fight with the double kind of AoE big ultimates from across the map to be able to drive them away or drop the health bars enough to not be able to follow up. But the problem is now you have to be sure that they're knocked out of a fight, because if it's Gorica that you're knocking out, he can heal himself up. He's got the shielding. Meslo's on a ward right now.
Oh my god, they catch out Meslo yet again. They shoot off the shot. Call the Forge God hits onto just Lynx, and he's dropped down to half HP. Here comes Requiem, seeing if he can shoot anybody out, but Lynx goes golden, and the key member they were trying to get off the map does not get punished, but instead it's Lynx firing back from a distance. Western Legends tries to close the distance, but cannot find that gap closed. Meslo on the hunt, on the prowl, seeing if he'll be able to lay a little bit more damage, but now it is Winston who's looking to see if he'll jump onto him, and Gorica will punish him immediately after, and now it is the song and dance played around the Baron. Kolthro trying to make his way in. Winston's here to beat the deterrent from this squad, but he's getting shut down so severely hard. Has to go golden trap sitting at his feet and will get shut down. AIRREN finds himself a fantastic shutdown for himself, but Prankuru is left all alone on the side, has to shuffle away as Lynx is there to keep him at bay. Kolthro looking to continue pursuit, but will just clear out this ward and possibly reset. Lynx not saying anything else about that, though. The gates have been put in, the laser has been shot. Kolthro's able to survive all that Western Legends throw their way, and the dance around the Baron has been completed.
It is insane, the back and forth between these two teams, because Western Legends start off with a good pick into Meslo, who's one of the more important members, one of the higher gold members on Grandview, that can throw kind of a lot of problems into their realm. The problem is they used their number one tool, I think, for both frontlining for CC and their smite into being able to catch him, and he got caught out, not willing to burn the flash to get over top of Baron Pit, thinking he could just run out of that situation. Winston gets caught as well, and it neuters this whole idea from Western Legend to be able to take the Baron just off the back of that 1 feed alone. And then Kolthro almost gets caught out, ice in his veins, ridiculous dodging to make sure that he doesn't get brought down, because if he does, almost certainly second Baron goes to Western Legends right on the spot.
I get scared every time I see Kolthro find somebody out because he's very squishy, but he also does a tremendous amount of damage. Like, this is a Volibear, has no magic resist. It's completely fine with everybody except for this Karthus hitting him up.
Okay.
So, he's fine.
Yeah.
I'm Kench. Thomas Kenchington.
GVU has spent everything possible to get themselves into the river, to just bunker here and set up Meslo for a potential flank behind them. Western Legends aren't playing their game. Instead, they push up mid lane pretty far, and they're going to walk up river and force them into unfamiliar territory. GVU now has to walk blind into 0 setup around the Baron buff. They see that they're on the Baron right here and right now. This is the deterrent. This is the Karthus ultimate that's going to drive them off. That
so
is getting more damage by the moment.
So immense, and Meslo goes in, finds Winston, he chose unstoppable, jump over the wall to make a death rocket into the backline, gets all 4, and it's GVU looking to rout everyone from Western Legends. Leaks barely alive, Gorica barely alive, DrCalculus still looking fairly healthy, and now it's up to these 3 members to try and mount a possible defense, but they are going to reset. They understand that they would just die if they try to contest this Baron, and it's secured by Grandview. What a team fight!
Really incredible from Grandview to finally capitalize on it, leading things off with all of this big damage. It allows them to shove back Western Legends. It makes them question their positioning because they can't stand in the river. They can't stand resolute to fight if they're all sitting at half health. I'm going to note a couple of things about this because, again, they're basically on full retreat once the Karthus ultimate comes through. They knew that the damage on the Baron wasn't significant. Gorica's out of this fight. Lynx is out of this fight. And then you can see even the Volibear, like you had attested to, no MR means he got dropped so much health that even Meslo on this AD assassin into full armor volley is able to drive him out. And also the heroics from Prankuru to hit a 4-person Ornn ultimate, finally landing onto multiple members, finally with a follow-up necessary to get themselves a fight win and a Baron. Most important part about this, I think it not only gets them a bit more gold, it evens up our gold state inside of a game like this between GVU and Western, but it also lets them have better setup for this next dragon where they're the ones with 3 dragons to 2 from Western Legends. They're the ones on the Infernal Soul Point to get their Jinx and more specifically also their Zed and their Karthus. Really heavy damage. And the Karthus is going to hit like a truck.
Bro, that's so disgusting. He's already got an upgraded item too, right, from Ornn, so it's actually just so hard for you to be able to mount any kind of defense about this. You can see this. Grandview says, hey, yo, we know we have the aggression. We know that we can fight as a group of 5, and this is where GVU look like they're at their most comfortable. They're online. That friendship has started to bolster them, and now they are looking to press into this mid lane, grabbing this tower. There's no way for Western Legends to defend it, but AIRREN not going to get caught by the damage. It's just going to be the split push continuing the 1-4 for Western Legends.
Difficult to catch up to Meslo, so he's able to do this relatively freely. There's nobody that could really stand against him in a side lane in a one-on-one, except for, you can definitely put Gangplank there, but obviously, like, the Viktor has enough wave clear with the Zonias to potentially stand up to him when the time comes. But really, again, GVU, they want to try to pressure this. I feel as though if they were just standing, 5-man in the mid lane, just defending against this with all of their wave clear, Western would be fine if they just gave up the top tower. They're trying to defend both at once, and I worry that's going to cost them a little bit more than they need to. So I think if they just give up top tower, they're okay with that, or at least more okay with that than anything else. Yeah, Gorica's dropped out. Yeah, you can't keep taking damage like that.
He's encircled himself with cupcakes. He's just like, please. Requiem comes in. Gorica's going to take a lot of damage from it. The shield bow comes in clutch. The Call to Forge guy goes into the mid lane, and Loyal just tries to see if he can defend against it. The aggression is palpable, and AIRREN gets dropped down critically low. But there you go. The death mark goes in. Lynx gets popped. Winston gets popped. GVU find a double kill, and now they're looking to set their sights onto the Nexus. As they're continuing to press forward, Meslo finds himself a possible, almost another assassination onto Gorica. No death mark needed. Kolthro is in the middle between 2 towers. Will get popped, get shot, and it is the passive proc from Karthus that's zoning out the rest of them as they get another Nexus tower before leaving the base of Western Legends in shambles.
Oh, the splitting of that defense led to Gorica losing the health bar, led to GVU being comfortable pushing their advantage in the mid lane with the Baron buff to driving into Western Legends base, getting so much more than I think I ever would have thought them getting off of this Baron buff. Just off a little bit of capitalization for Meslo in the side lane, chipping down the health bar of Gorica, incredible to watch. Thankfully, the base defense comes through from Western because they're able to drive them out, prevent them from ending the game right there and right now. The pick off onto Kolthro is a good amount of help. The Guardian Angel now completed for Gorica, feeling better about the situation. Not to mention, they get the inside track on the Dragon, which to me was the whole grand scheme here for Grandview. They should have been playing for the Dragon stacking, for the Infernal Soul, and instead they're the ones that have to walk blind into the river unless they're willing to just full test and say, all right, Western, you're already in the river. Let's see if you're comfortable giving up your base for it. Let's see if we can end the game.
Look at the wraparound. Meslo's coming up from behind him. AIRREN gets hit by the laser, but here we go. Karthus just hits onto nobody. Requiem's there. The HP bar shot critically low. Meslo's going to be looking for the assassination. Goes golden into the backline as well. As AIRREN's looking to try and see if he can get inside. The HP bars are so critically low. Anybody could fall at any moment from Western Legends. And it is Grandview who dropped them down so critically low. They are pushing into the base. Western Legends, they got to reset. They got to mount the defense.
Full reset except for DrCalculus.
Oh,
okay.
Looking for loyal. Doesn't get him. They're looking for more. It's still the defense here. Artillery being shot down. Winston's looking to see if he can bring the bear down. The Dragon is being done at the current moment in time. AIRREN goes ahead and cleanses, but it's not enough. The Viktor gets a kill onto AIRREN. He finds the Zed. He finds the Karthus. It is Western Legends mounting a desperate defense, but who's really desperate here? As it's only Prankuru stays alive. Everybody else is able to manage this defense, only losing the Viktor. Prankuru is going to be chased down as he runs back to his base for safety.
Okay, incredible from Western Legends. Let's see if they can capitalize on it, because they're going to grab mid inhibitor, and minimum they're going to get the Dragon on the back end, and they might actually finish the game. They have 25 seconds, 30 seconds from this point right now to potentially push right into the base. They got minions right behind them. Let's see if they can do it. I think they're going to make the call because they've got Gorica and they've got DrCalculus as well. Prankuru's the only one to stop them.
Prankuru is the only one to stop him. There's 10 seconds up until AIRREN and Pluto are here. Call to Forge God's being used, but he gets rooted. He's not able to apply the CC that is going to be necessary. He finds Winston. Winston is dropped. That's a critical member taking away from the formula, but they're looking to just try and force down the base. Can they do it? They're looking for it, and they do! Western Legends find themselves game number 1.
I don't know who called that fight. I don't know who called the chasing to let Gorica back and to go for the Dragon, which I think should have full committed to, actually, from the side of Western Legends. My one problem with that, but whoever made the call to push them directly in base and pinch them into a position where they had to full commit to the end before they had anything else, right into the Gangplank ultimates, incredible. One of the best shot calls I've seen inside of Collegiate League of Legends. It was exactly what I anticipated them doing. It is an incredibly bold call and required insane amounts of clutch moment at the last possible second. But Western, they're base in shambles with 5 members at the ready to take their Nexus, mount the defense, Travis. Game 1 of round of 16 is delivering in spades.
It's delivering in spades. We got ourselves a game of tug of war where neither team wants to be pulled over to the other side. But we do have our fantastic deaths that are ready to break everything down and get us prepped for an amazing game number 2. So lads, take it on away.
Wow. Oh my gosh, Travysty and Rebel. What an exciting game 1. And I mean, TJ, last week when I was on the show, we had 9 games in total out of 9 potential games. Maybe we're going to get that again. I mean, that first game was so insane, back and forth. No idea who was going to come out on top until the very end, and I think we were all kind of thinking GVU would win, and oh my gosh. We'll dive into all that. We've got replays for everything, but I want to start first with the draft and pick your brains about what sort of champions came up that you guys think are interesting. We did talk about the patch. Josh, I'm going to start with you. What stuck out to you with this draft?
I mean, I feel like we got to talk about it. The Zed was one of the main characters in this entire game, and he got the last pick. He was red side. We saw him have a fantastic laning phase with it, but throughout the course of the game, we saw, this character was central to basically everything that happened across the entire game.
Yeah, I think the draft's super interesting. We had Western with obviously a long-range comp and a Volibear. Volibear was obviously marking the Zed. I think Western played extremely well around the long-range comp, and like Josie said, the Zed was pivotal, but unfortunately did not show up today.
Yeah, we were harping a little bit on the Zed, but it did have some very flashy moments in that game, and we do have a sequence of replays that sort of highlighted the highs and lows of Zed in that game. And TJ, I know you're very passionate about the pick and how it was piloted in this game, so I'm going to let you go through each replay and sort of give your thoughts on Zed overall.
Sure. So in the replays, we saw that obviously Meslo had an extremely strong laning phase. He created some solo kills throughout the course of this. He drew a ton of pressure around the mid lane. Unfortunately, Loyal little underperformance here. But as the game went on, I don't think Meslo understood exactly what his purpose was in this game. We saw that at a third dragon, he tried to engage on a Volibear without understanding where all the positions were for the enemy team. Instead, he could have, camped in line brush, waited for a squishy, just held the flank in a very non-committal type of way. And then later on, obviously, he tried to 1v4, got caught at Baron, just tons of different things. I think if Meslo had a stronger understanding of how to play the game conceptually in terms of what his purpose is, that it would have been completely different. And, with a Z3-0, I'm sure you've seen in solo queue, he just runs the game with his 50-second ultimate cooldown. Here, we just have it pulled up, try to kill the Volibear. Unfortunately, Meslo is CC chained by the Lux and the Volibear. Again, if he could have camped the line brush here, then he would have had a winning position. It could have been a quadra kill even. As the casters had alluded to. Josie, you want to hop on there?
Yeah, I mean, I think we did see, as you said, there was a couple of spots that left a little bit to be desired, but I feel like he kind of figured it out a lot better towards the end of the game. But I also want to use this opportunity to kind of credit the people who are punishing his overextensions, right? We saw that every single time Zed was out of position, Winston was right there to punish him. Was Meslo too close to the Volibear? Maybe. But Winston was always running him down. He was forcing unusual ults out of Meslo. He was forcing Meslo to make uncomfortable decisions and rely on those mechanics that we saw in the beginning. And, to Meslo's credit, it worked out for him half the time, but it was still a very uncomfortable position in the first place. And we got to credit Winston for being in the right place so often this game.
It really did feel like Winston was driving this game. Yeah, TJ, what were you going to say?
Here's the final sequence that comes up in terms of Zed getting caught top lane. We can make the argument that he shouldn't be here. Obviously, he played it extremely mechanically well, but this, again, just highlights the lack of understanding, I think, on what to do. Joshi made a great point there of highlighting the team. I'd also like to highlight all the long-range members. It's extremely hard to play these 4 squishy characters into a Zed, but they spaced well. They dropped good Gangplank barrels, good Lux Qs. Lux probably landed like 10 bindings that game, so I think it was an extremely well-played instance by Western, especially where all the members that maybe we didn't have as high of expectations for stepped up and punished the fact that GVU was making mistakes.
Yeah, and keeping this analyst train moving along, our next replay is actually one of the more exciting moments in the game. It was around 30 minutes. There was a team fight at the Dragon, short little exchange, and then there was a really, really big team fight for GVU at the Baron, Josh.
Yeah, and TJ, you and I were having a fair amount of conversation over how these Karthus ultimates should be used. This is a great example where we fully agree. It's these ultimates before these fights actually start, they do insane damage. You're instantly taking Gorica and Lynx to half HP, and even though Winston has been doing a fantastic job preventing Meslo from getting into the cookie jar, unfortunately, the guard was not strong enough to actually stand up to it, and it creates a huge window for the rest of his team to create enough space and actually start hitting the Baron. And that's one of these big things where, a big credit to Winston for making sure Zed can't get in, but when your guard is dead, suddenly nobody can protect your squishy backline.
And I think that clip really highlights the power of the Karthus plus Assassin. It is so hard to play the team fight when you've lost 50% of your HP on a squishy into a Zed. Nearly impossible.
Yeah.
So if GVU could have played better, I think, around that concept, then, again, I think the game would have been a clear win for them.
Smells like a draw her coach gap. I don't know. I mean, that's a pretty solid draft for me. We do have one more replay to quickly go through before we talk about some adaptations for game 2. This final replay is the one where we all thought GVU was gonna win. They're literally knocking on the door, ready
Gangplank's
to
hitting
end
Dragon.
the game. What the heck happens here, Josh?
Honestly, I was still trying to figure it out. I was so focused on the fact that Gangplank isn't even here, but the big thing is Gorica is able to kind of find the pocket, right? You always have to look at the AD carries. Are they able to free hit? There's nobody that can actually hit this Caitlyn. Kolthro moves off to one side. Meslo has no cooldowns left. And so once that happens, Gorica just kind of gets to free hit. Volibear is always in front. And once you've accomplished all these things, the 2-star members that we hyped up at the beginning of the series of Winston and Gorica, they do what they need to do. They find the targets they need to, and it turns into a startling win from a situation where we thought Grandview was going to take it.
And in that team fight, we actually saw that AIRREN got hit by the Viktor ult, by the Volibear. He wasn't able to contribute to the fight, and that comes down to a positional error. So between the Tahm Kench safety and the Jinx long range, the GVU's bot lane misplayed that fight, and unfortunately, that was the last mistake that cost the game. So I have some higher expectations for them in this next game, and I'd love to see them maybe play something that has a higher impact in the mid game, where the Tahm Kench isn't so passive into 4 long range characters.
Yeah, we were talking during the game. It really did feel like, if you replace Tahm Kench with something else, I think Pluto could have a little bit more of an impact because we know he's a great player. Oh my goodness, guys. I don't know if I could take 3 whole games this intense back and forth. We did get word from production that teams are staying on the same sides, and it is time to get into Game 2 between Western Legends and Grandview University. Travysty, Rebel, take it away.
I don't know about you, Rebel, but I'm ready for that intensity. Let's bring it in. We're going into game number 2 after what was a game of both teams kind of playing hot potato. It felt like a tug of war. There was all sorts of different euphemisms and different ways that you can talk about how that game played. But wow, what a back and forth in game number 1. And we still got game number 2 in front of us.
It's really incredible because last week, honestly, again, it was the pressure being put onto GVU by San Diego that they were able to overcome twice in the later stages that led us to believe that they were going to be very comfortable in late game situations. And you could see it was there. They had ways to play out a game like this. When you have players as experienced as Winston and Gorica in your roster, when you've got members even like Lynx and even Loyal, I think that's been around for such a long time in collegiate, and when all of them have had this competitive experience at this level of play, you have the clutch factor yourself as well. And right there, they came out ahead in terms of that result because the game was incredibly back and forth between the two. You could not call that one-sided if you wanted to, one way or the other at any point really during the course of that game. So I'm hoping we get another game like that because it was really, really enticing. It was an amazing start up to the game. I'm curious what differences actually come out here. While I don't disrespect the Zed pick, I don't want to make that apparent at all. I think Meslo had some very good moments there. To me, that was the complex part of their composition that they couldn't quite figure out. If they had something else that fulfilled a similar purpose, but maybe it was a bit easier for Meslo to be able to manage off the back of that Karthus ultimate, this game might look completely different. They might be able to capitalize fight in, fight out every single time, and Western maybe can't kite their way out of every situation, find themselves in a safer place.
Yeah, I mean, just to add on to that point too, we talked about it inside of game number 1. The Call to Forge God, the Ornn was blown, and guess what? Hey, nobody was around to follow up on it several times inside the fights. Can you imagine if they were able to get something going for themselves and see if they were able to, scramble for those plays, make things happen? But I did hear that we do have a little bit of an error that's going on as we're trying to get that resolved. We're going to take ourselves a short little break, and when we come back, we'll be heading into the draft. So make sure you don't go anywhere, as we'll be right back.